I am actually I'm actually a trash guy. My job in Johnson County is to reduce waste, and I do a lot with the landfills and all kinds of the trash that we generate in Johnson County. But one of the things I've been fascinated with really since I was a kid was composting. And so I've gotten a lot of formal training in the last, probably 10 to 13 years on composting, and I just continue to like it more and more. And so I'm really happy to be talking about it and letting other people know about it. And so hopefully I can teach us a few things of the basics, and even into kind of what I'd like to do is kind of talk about why compost to me is so unique and useful. So we'll just keep going, and we'll, if you've got any questions, stop me and we can answer questions or whatever, how we want to do it, but we'll kind of keep an eye on there. And if I need to, we'll just kind of hurry up and make sure that we get everything covered, because I think I've got a lot of good information. So, all right, here we go. So kind of what we're going to start off with is what I call, and what I learned on it are actually there are five rules of rot. And so this is one of the composting things that I got a hold of, and I've found it to be really useful. And so we'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about kind of the benefits of compost, and then we're going to kind of talk about the key players also in there, and those will be mostly microbes. So I wanted to include this because I think in general, it really explains why composting is really important. And, really the key to composting to me is creating a good home for the microbes. And from there, if you build it right, they're already there, and then they thrive, and you're going to be able to get consistently good compost because you're encouraging the right kind of growth. So you're kind of, your microbes are your livestock, if you will. And these are the players. You have, even down below 55 degrees, there is some sort of bacterial workhorse there that's working to break down organic material. And that is the Sacrophilic Bacteria. They they thrive in areas that have temperatures 55 degrees and below, and that would be Fahrenheit. And so then as things start to warm up, your Sacrophilic bacteria start kind of going to sleep, and they don't take as much of a role. And think of it as a kind of a continuum. And so as your Sacrophilic start going down and your temperatures start going up, then you're going to get your Mesophilic bacteria. They thrive in anything from 70 degrees up to about 100 degrees. And they work pretty well, but they're not the fastest ones out there. And then once you get over 100 and get up into the 100 teens, all the way up to 160 degrees, you are hitting the thoroughbreds right there. And they work fast. They create a lot of heat. As a matter of fact, you can actually, they can create heat enough to create a fire if your compost is big enough. But for most of our backyard stuff, you're probably not going to worry about that. But I normally get 140 to 150 degrees in my compost, and you'll see kind of why and how I'm going to tell you to kind of build a compost pile or bin. You'll see why it works. And then anything over 130 or 160, you're really kind of not really helping yourself because your thermophilic bacteria are even dying. So you want to make sure that you're keeping up as many of those as possible. And so, because you don't want your bugs or your bacteria, your compost bacteria, to be dying off. You want those to be working as hard as you can. Some of the other organisms in your compost are going to be your molds, your yeasts, and your mushrooms. But as you can see there on that first bullet, 80 to 90% of bacteria, that's your activity right there. That is most of your composting. Your molds and yeast, they make up that other remainder, but they're not the active things in there. So pretty much your thermophilic bacteria are your biggest workhorses in composting. And here's another kind of aside, and you can, these are really good things to have, but actinomycetes is a really great, it's kind of a cross in between your bacteria and some of your fungus. But it's kind of a little bit of everything. And if you've ever smelled like that nice earthy smell, that tells you that actinomycetes has been there. They kind of finish off everything. So that's a really good kind of, I guess, sign if you have actinomycetes, that they are going to be digesting some of the tough stuff like lignins, and if you put like other kind of tough materials in there, lots of cellulose. I put all kinds of different things in mine just to kind of see what happens. But bark, anything kind of papery. If you've got some bugs or something like that, some chitin, that all of that will break down. But really, actinomycetes is the one that does the most of the work there. But it's a good friend of yours. So really, with this, we want what I like to use is kind of a whole spectrum of things, and your carbon compounds and your oxygen, those are really the fuel for the growth in the microbes. And when you start getting that respiration, you're going to have carbon dioxide get produced, and that's great. That's what you want. And so you're going to create some water vapor at 140, 150 degrees. You're going to feel the humidity up around there, and it's going to end up turning into kind of a dark brown black material. If you can recognize what is in there, it's not broken down yet. It's going to be a very, and you'll see some pictures here, a very different thing from, so if you put leaves and grass in there, you're not going to see leaves and grass. There might be some remnants, but you want to separate that. And really what I do is I kind of let it sit for a while. And usually all of that falls down to the bottom, and you don't have to really separate it too much. So we'll kind of get into the really building the pile and kind of figure out the the key things, key factors that really control what you're composting. So these are the 5 rules of rot. And the first one is mass and particle size, your CN or carbon to nitrogen ratio, your moisture, oxygen, and time. Those are your variables. Your mass is going to be all about what your feedstock is. What are you putting in there? Then your particle size, clearly, if you have more surface area, the bugs are going to be able to get at it faster. And so they will metabolize it a lot faster if you have smaller particle size. It's not a game buster by any means. You can have some bigger stuff, and actually it's pretty good to have a varied volume, different shapes, different sizes, because then that's all going to fit together pretty tightly. Whereas if you put in just a bunch of round things, you're going to have a lot of spaces, and that's good. You want some pore spaces in there, because that traps oxygen and allows airflow to go through and keep the pile aerobic. So you want to be able to do that. Your CN ratio the next, I think it's the next slide, will kind of explain that a little bit more, but that's your carbon to nitrogen ratio. There's kind of an ideal one that you want, and it's kind of 30 to 40 to 1. And I'll show you kind of how to, I'm not a great mathematician, so I'll show you kind of how to figure that out pretty quick. Moisture, you want it to be, you want your compost pile to be kind of like a wrung sponge. So you want it damp, but you don't want it flooding. Otherwise, you're going to drown your microbes, and we don't want to do that. Then it's going to go anaerobic, and it's going to smell. The oxygen is going to keep it nice and clean. You're going to keep the aerobic bugs working. And so you shouldn't have really too many odors at all. And I'll show you how we can prevent odors too. And then of course, time. It's going to take some time. I'm pretty lazy. I let mine sit for a while, so I'm not trying to get the stuff out as fast as I can, but you can get it turned around pretty quickly. A lot of times I will turn it within a few days if it's really going, and you'll know by the temperature how fast it's moving. And once it starts cooling down, that's when you'll want to turn it. And then kind of reinvigorate it and get it going again. So that's kind of the main full of the 5 rules of rot there. So again, here's you can see here you've got kind of a critical mass, and you want to support that process. And so you want to have, that's why you want to have at least 1 cubic yard of material, because really the core is where everything's going to happen. And so you want that insulation on the outside of your compost bin to basically be an insulation. And you'll see some composting on the outside, but it's not going to be as much. And I want you to notice the little diagram over here. That's kind of what you should kind of, I guess, kind of look in your head. Is the brown is your composting particles. Just for ease, let's call them leaves and grass, okay? And you want to film the water around that, because you still want air to come in. And so that's what's going to keep the oxygen moving and keep that fire burning, if you will. It's not really burning, but it's going to keep your microbes working hard because they are aerobic themselves. I mentioned to you this smaller particle, the quicker it breaks down. And just, think of that surface area. If you can find something with and provide as much surface area, you're going to have a lot more success with that, and it's going to happen a lot faster. And like I said, you want to start with a cubic yard of material. So that's going to be what kind of I've figured, so you want a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot box. And I can tell you it's kind of some of the easy ways to, if you don't have a bin, to get one for maybe even free. any kind of, what do you call it, pallet is fantastic. If you can get them for free, there's no chemicals in them. They're all pressure treated. And a lot of times, even if they're missing a piece or two, you can contain it with it. It will contain your compost. So, okay, number 2, CN ratio. So we have greens and browns, as you might find obvious. Browns are carbon things like leaves, but not all of them are brown. So you have leaves, straw, paper, wood chips, sawdust. I would be careful with sawdust. Sawdust can be so fine. It really depends on how fine it is. If you have a woodworker or something that does really fine stuff, and that is really fine. If you can mix it up with some other things to create enough airflow. I've even been a part of doing some just sawdust, fine sawdust, and the oxygen just doesn't get in there. So it doesn't, there's not enough pore spaces in there. It compacts, self compacts really easily. So I would, if you want to do sawdust with wood chips and pine needles and maybe some other things, and in the list, I'm all for that, but don't use my recommendation is don't just use sawdust. But as long as it's not treated or anything like that, it'll work. It's a carbon source. Your greens are your nitrogens. And again, not always green, but sometimes they're like coffee grounds, tea, loose leaf tea, even tea bags. The microbes will get in there, and you can cut them open or whatever, and get the resulting compost out of there. And any kind of vegetable waste, we don't want meats, and we don't want dairy. And then any kind of herbivore manures, cow, horse, poultry. I think rabbit and poultry are probably the easiest ones, but you can get anything. Cows and horses especially typically have a little bit more kind of weed seeds. They don't process quite to the extent that the poultry and rabbit do, just because they've got a little bit more surface area. And then eggshells are not really a green, but they will put calcium in the compost, and that's really good for your gardens. So your plants will thank you if you want to crush up some shells in there. Hair, pound for pound, hair is great. It is probably as good, if not better, than as far as nitrogen source as manures. My caution would be, don't go too crazy with it. But if you want to experiment with a little bit of it, I've got a cat that sheds like right after. I don't think I can get to the bottom of the fur. And so I put, like any mats or anything like that, I put it in my compost all the time, and it disappears. It's fantastic. And you can do dog fur, you can do whatever, but any kind of hair, I wouldn't put anything like, if you just, well, hopefully you don't need to cut your hair right after you get it done, but if you get dyed or anything like that, let it kind of get all the chemicals out. And then if you want to cut it off, you can do that too. So anyway, that's a lot of people don't think about that, but that's a great nitrogen source that a lot of people don't think of. So here's kind of my addendum to Rule 2. So this leaves and grass are super good at pairing those, because your ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio is going to be 30-1. And so if you have one part leaf at 40-1 and one grass unit, and then you add those two, so it would be 60-2, and then you divide it, you simplify it, and so basically you get a 30-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. And that's why, you know, if you can do it, and you can do this with anything, if you look on the internet, you can pretty much find the carbon nitrogen ratio to just about anything. They're probably on a lot of the farm websites, anything like that, but Google carbon nitrogen ratio for this, you know, apples or whatever, and you can get that. And then you just put all of that together, you simplify it, and you just want to get that range. If you want to just throw stuff in there and it heats up, well, good job. You know, you don't have to be Mr. Scientist, Mr. or Miss Scientist to do it. But leaves and grass are just a really good way to get started with it. And most people have leaves and grass. So,
hey, Craig.
Yeah.
Question that I think may have been partially answered in the chat, but Lindsay was asking, what about dryer lint? Any concerns?
Oh, dryer lint is good, usually because it has, I try and kind of separate it so it doesn't get all kind of clogged up. It doesn't kind of mat. But usually you get hair and, you know, a little bit of everything in there. Even if it is like a synthetic, it's going to really help to just kind of draw the water in or store it until everything needs it, and they'll go and get it if necessary. But it's kind of a good bulking agent, if you will. If you want to, I do it. Drives my wife crazy, but that I keep it and store it until I get my compost going. But yeah, I'm like, it's composting, it's okay. But yeah, no, it works great.
Thank you.
Especially like cotton, easy, good stuff. Okay, so let's go on to the third rule. Oh, okay, here's some other things. So don't put, again, any meat, dairy, any kind of baked products that have like butter, anything like that. You know, bread's okay. Yeah, nappies, dog food, cat litter, any kind of carnivore manure, no, don't do that. You're going to get, that can cause disease, and we don't want to do that. So if you want to, my solution for like dog poo or anything like that, what you can do is take a post hole digger, or if you want to use a shovel, make it kind of a shallow hole, maybe a foot down, foot and a half down, and you can put your manure in there for dogs especially. And then what I do is I put like a paving stone or something over the top of it, and actually the microbes and other critters, worms and stuff, they'll eat it up and disperse it throughout your lawn. So that's kind of what I tell people there. Cat litter, just throw it away. I'm sorry. I know I'm a waste reduction person, but just get rid of it. And let's see, anything else? I think that's about it. And again, just with the large animal manure, just be careful that you're maybe make extra sure that you want to get the temperatures up to kill any kind of weed seeds, or just to anticipate it and weed if you like weeding. Okay, moisture. Really the water, it's going to take more than you ever thought. And the entire pile needs to be about 50% moisture. And I told you, if you take a handful of it and squeeze it, it should be damp, but water should not come out of your fist. That's my, I guess, non-techie way of determining about 50% moisture. And yeah, remember you have microbes in there, so you want water. And I would say too, my preferred way of getting moisture into the compost pile is as you build it, spray it. Because if you put everything in there, layer it nice and nice, you're not going to get the moisture where you want it. So I always build it layer by layer, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And I always wet it down before I go to the next layer.
Hey, Craig, two questions. Sorry about what can
That's
go
okay.
into the pile again.
Yeah,
So what about walnut shells or nut shells?
sure. You might get a
And
walnut tree, but or a sprout, but yeah, any of that. I would say with walnuts especially, make sure that the green coatings out. You know what? Yeah, nah, let's avoid the walnuts. Anything else, I think you're good.
okay, and
Sorry to contradict myself, but yeah, walnuts, let's leave those alone.
yeah, don't they like
They have an
acidic, right? Yeah.
inhibitor like
Yeah.
enzyme in them, and it's for competition basically, if I remember my biology. And no, you don't want that in your compost.
And what about why not cooked rice, I guess is the question.
You know what? I don't know. And honestly, I put if we have like rice that just needs to go away in the fridge, I take it out. So I'm not sure. I've never seen that actually, even though I put it in there. I mean, on that slide, I don't remember why that is, but I do it all the time. It's super fast because it's all starch. It's like, oh, I can't think of some of the, Jolt stuff. It's like a bunch of caffeine for the microbes, as far as I know. I've never had any trouble with it, and I've never seen it not break down. So anything else? Okay, I'm going to go. If not, we'll come back.
Sorry, I was muted. Why not citrus and onion peels?
I put onion peels in mine, and I don't know. I'll have to look on that. I will look that up and I will get back with you. I do not know. I've never heard not to do that. That's kind of funny because I put grapefruit in mine. I put oranges. I put citrus in mine. Maybe it's because it changes the pH or something slightly. I've never had any problem.
Yeah, that's what Jenna is saying, that some people say it can change the pH. It makes sense. It's acidic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, if you water it down well enough, maybe it doesn't make any. Maybe I waste too much water, but
dilution's the solution.
Yep, it sure is.
Oh, and Lindsay says, based on her quick Google, Dr. Google says it's a myth. So, okay.
Okay. All right. Well, good. We've busted a myth. Okay, so oxygen, I think we've done that. As I said before, small pockets trap oxygen, and yep, turn your pile every once in a while. And what I do is I wait till it goes it'll break down. So your level will go from, right up at the top or whatever, at the top of your 3 feet, and then you'll see it go down. I mean, it will be noticeable. And what I do is I wait for it to start cooling down a little bit. You can put your hand on there and get your hand in there, and the little bugs won't hurt you, and see what the temperature is. And if it's starting to be like, oh yeah, that's probably less than I want it to be, and you want to get it active again, that's when you turn it. Now keep that oxygen in there. And the last one is time. Your active stuff, your fast compost, 1 to 3 months. I don't think I've ever waited 3 months. Well, okay, I have, but not on purpose. But usually, to me, it's within a couple of weeks, and then I'll turn it. And as I think I mentioned before, I get 140, 150 pretty consistently. So, but you know what, too, it's okay if say you leave on a trip or something and it sits there. It's no big deal. just turn it, and then it'll probably make sure that there's plenty of water in it, and it'll go again. And all your microbes are already on all of that. You can see some partially composted stuff. Man, anything that you've got that are what I would call overs in the industry, it's something that wouldn't, you would put back into the next windrow because it's not quite done yet. That inoculates your compost pile immediately, and use the same thing all the time, because you will have millions of microbes waiting for their feast, and they will hit it super fast. And maybe that's part of why I get good results on a regular basis, is I've just got this kingdom of microbes. So, and then your maturation, just leave it there for a while. You certainly don't want to put any kind of green compost on flower beds or anything like that. And I mean like unmatured, because it's going to hurt your plants, basically. You want it to feed your plants, not get them sick. So I just usually leave it kind of to the next season or several months. But when you get it, it's nice and crumbly and got a lot of good stuff in it. It has a good smell to it. It's done. And but if it's still warm or anything like that, don't put it on anything yet. Okay, some added benefits. Compost, soil erosion. Compost helps that, because you're helping to grow plants and things like that to keep that soil in place. Stormwater management helps that. Any kind of production that shows promise in increasing the water capacity and helping rebuild healthy soils, which I'll talk about, and improving air quality. All of that is something that compost helps to do, and the soil microbes are going to sequester carbon into your soil and really help build structure. And don't put, my recommendation, you can do what you want, but if you're using commercial fertilizers and things like that, that's going to counteract anything from the compost, and you're going to get, in my opinion, better results through using compost in gardens and lawns than you will. And I will fully admit, I'm not a lawn guy. I don't have to have a perfect lawn. So if that's who you are, then you be you. And let's see here. Also, where I threw in a question, where are the microbes getting the carbon? They're getting it from the air. And so that's, well, they're getting it through eating the plants and processing those plants. And that's where that carbon is coming from. And then all the microbes in the soil, they will actually fix it into the soil. All right, let's keep rocking and rolling. And there it is, photosynthesis. Compost maturity. So that, of course, refers to compost that's no longer undergoing decomposition. And so you want to, I've had a couple people call me and say, oh my gosh, there's bugs in my compost. And I'm like, well, that's fantastic. That means it's cooled down, and they're preying on, you want things like centipedes and stuff like that, because they're hunting. That means you've got a live material in your compost. That's a fantastic thing. And that means that is going to do exactly what you want it to do. And, you want to see those sow bugs, worms, of course, those won't move into most of these won't move into your compost until it will cool down. So don't be surprised if you don't see them. And then if you wait a little while, then you kind of start digging through it and you'll see all kinds of stuff. And that's all good stuff. And you might see that actinomycetes too. It doesn't happen all the time for me, but every once in a while I'll get some. Okay, so again, kind of a little bit more on the benefits of your compost. It's really enriching the soil, and with compost, you're building more resilient plants. They're resilient to disease and pests, and really you don't need the chemical fertilizers for this. What you're doing with the chemical, you're getting basically man-made fertilizers and things that are going to kill the microbial population in the ground. This stuff actually boosts it up. So and what that's going to do, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, is that lowers the carbon footprint of whatever you put it in there, because of the sequestration of carbon into our own soils. So that is kind of a whole thing that has really been fascinating me. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, here's some more. The compost, the organic material there that's in the compost and in the ground, that is going to help retain moisture. It's going to get that fungi and microbes and everything that you want in a healthy soil. That's what, like the Great Plains and stuff, that's what got kind of ruined when they started plowing everything up. And I came from a farming family, so I'm not trying to get ag people mad, but that's kind of, once we started disturbing that soil, and now we're finding out how important every little microbe out there is in our soil. And so it really stops any kind of crust hardening of the soil, and it helps water disperse properly, and really does a lot of amazing things. It's all the simple little things to me that come together to help us. Here's kind of the difference between the living soil and the dead soil, and I'm not going to go through all of this because partly I can't hardly read it down here, but I want you more to focus on here we have a nice live corn stalk, that's moving a lot, and you see the bugs and the worms and stuff beneath them. And dead soil over here is pretty much desert, and you see the grasshopper there, poor grasshopper, and a few little disease and things like that that you don't want as a part of your garden or your lawn or anything that you're using compost on. Compost amended soils, in a study, the plants have significantly more biomass, so they're bigger. They're for grasses and things, for like grass for cattle, they've measured that they're about 50%. There's 50% more grass in lettuce and kohlrabi in one study, 24% more than without, and 32% without. And it improves the plant nutrition and the plant's disease resistance through using compost amended soils. So that is amazing that it happens, that there's that significant of a difference. Environmentally friendly. You know, if your kids get in your compost pile, well, you know, they might just end up with worms and things like that. But if they get in your other chemicals, you know, there's some issues there. So less greenhouse gases, and honestly, just less waste and more composting. I will kind of hit on this information kind of came from this treehugger.com benefits of composting. I thought it was an interesting article, so I wanted to throw in there. And of course, less stuff going to landfill. That's one of my goals. So waters have shown for every 1% of organic matter in that soil, it can hold 16,500 gallons of plant available water per acre. That is amazing if you utilize that. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a guy, an extension guy, was talking about how he learned it. He learned from an old codger that it was like, look, I can make something grow with just 2 inches of rain. And he said, you're full of it. And by golly, they did it. And and so he's like, okay. And that was kind of his standard moving forward, is if you get more than 2 inches a year, then, you know, I can grow something. And so he went around and really consulted people across the country and really got them going on the ability to keep that water down in the soils so that it's plant available. Pretty neat stuff and pretty amazing. So these are our 2 windrows that I saw out in, I believe, Colorado. And so anyway, these are like really large ones. I think those are about 9 feet tall. And they have a specific turner that they use, but just wanted to utilize that and kind of show you on a commercial standpoint how composting's done. And so what they'll do is they will have kind of a recipe of how much nitrogen, and it's the same ratios, it's just bigger, more material. And so anyway, that's some good stuff there. One of the things I've also gotten involved with is the composting of dead cattle and other dead animals. And it's been very interesting. We went through a training. USDA has a program, and we worked with actually Kansas Department of Ag. And we got a bunch of people trained over 2 years. And so I think we have 12 people now that are certified to be able to do this. And we put together a similar windrow like you saw in the previous slide, kind of that nice big mound. And what you do is you basically, your nitrogen is in with the bodies of the animal, with the animals there, and you see kind of the base material there, that's all carbon, and then all the cover material is carbon, and you can see it's about 8 feet, 9 feet tall. And if you do it right and kind of can maneuver the carcasses and stuff, we composted, it was about a football field long, about 100 yards long. And we composted, I think it was about 60,000 pounds of hogs, a horse, and cows that died of natural causes from some producers in the area. And we were getting temperatures, activity about 2 days in, and they max about 3 days in, we hit 145 degrees. What the whole kind of idea is that you get a local composting around the animal carcasses. It is very high in nitrogen, but you cannot use it for any kind of crops that humans will use. So, but really fascinating. And through that, I kind of realized that in Johnson County, at least, and I'm sure probably over all over the place in Kansas, there people have horses, they have livestock. And to me, that's just a better way to conserve nutrients and stuff and rendering is just not really a great alternative at this point. It's expensive. They're very picky. They don't always want everything. So anyway, if you know of anybody, I would be interested in helping at least get them set up and see what we can do. So, but it's been absolutely fascinating, and I think they were fully composted in about 4 or 5 weeks. So we turned them 3 times and over that time frame, and we had a few bones left, but beyond that, nothing was even recognizable. There's a really good kind of, I like the hands with that, but that's compost, and it really does retain well the water well. So very, very neat stuff. And so one of the things, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, kind of a solution that I'm finding is for some of our environmental problems right now has a lot to do with compost. And one of the Dr. Wendy Silver, she is actually out of UCal Berkeley, did some experiments out on some of the rangeland in kind of Northern California. And she actually calculated, they did all kinds of stuff and we're finding a lot of good resilience and activity in carbon sequestration in the soils through using compost in these rangelands. And what she figured out and calculated kind of through these experiments was that if they could if we could produce enough and transport enough compost to basically spread 1/2 inch across half of California's grasslands, we could make California carbon neutral. That is spectacular, putting 1/2 inch. Now, the logistics aren't easy, clearly, but for them to do that, be able to do that and even understand that that much carbon sequestration can happen, that's pretty amazing to me. And so I've not met her, but I met another colleague, and he talked to us and was really amazing. They had no idea that was going to happen, and but it did. And so it's really led to some neat follow-up experiments. So anyway, with that, I think, unless I'm missing something, nope, it's question time.
Craig, thank you so much for your amazing knowledge. And I would invite anybody who has any questions to unmute themselves or type in the chat, and we'd be happy to read those off to you. But that's awesome. I did note that Miles was saying that Olathe uses windrows also, which is
they do
cool.
Yes.
And yeah, there's some pretty intrigued people with using compost or using composting process.
Yeah.
To get rid of horses and cows. All right. Are there any benefits to using the compost tumbler bins as opposed to the traditional methods of composting? What a great question.
I think there's some use. I will say I don't think you get the results that you do by putting using kind of a traditional bin. And here's why. What we recommend and what has always been recommended to me from other people is that critical mass, it has to be at least a cubic yard to get the temperatures that you want. It will eventually compost, but you might have some weed seeds in it. And if that doesn't bother you, then go ahead and use it. That's fine. But to kind of make sure it gets processed as well as it can, I recommend using a bin system or something like that. But, if that, again, it will break down and it will kind of, even I'm gonna not remember the Japanese one where they'll do it on your countertop, and it's kind of more of almost a pickling rather than, that's fine. That's great. I have no problem with that at all. If you use it, that's fine, but just know the limitations of it. To me, is the only thing that I would say as an educator is don't let anybody tell you that is perfectly well and that you won't get any weeds or anything like that. They just don't tend to get to me, they're very much more expensive. I think using pallets and things like that, and resources that are, I guess, kind of renewable or to me is more attractive than going and spending. Some of those are $200, $300, $400, and I'd rather put that into other things. But that's me. If you want to use it, or if you have some little small thing that dries it out or whatever, the good thing is if you just even dig a hole in your yard and put some organic material in there, you're ahead of the game. So, the trick is, how do you get organic matter in there? And, the microbes will break it down and everything like that, and they'll turn it into the soil. So that's the other method that I really didn't talk about is vermicomposting. And there are a lot of people that are very emphatic about that, and it's not really composting. It's more you're gathering up the worm poo, and that's fine. It's very nutritious. It's very good for your plants. They love it. And so but just that, they call it composting, but technically that's not composting. But if you're not squeamish about worms, there are certain ones that I think they're the red wigglers that you want. But I know people that they're dead set on it, and they've got it under their kitchen sink. So it works fantastic.
We have a staff person who does vermicomposting.
Yeah.
And so one last question, and I think we're going to have to be quick because we're starting to lose folks because we're at the top of the hour. What are some free compost bin options you would suggest?
If you can find pallets, a lot of times you can see them out by the dumpster. I don't know why anybody would throw them out, but that would probably be that. Or if you find like snow fencing or something like that, something to corral about a cubic yard. Anything, if you've got extra wood or anything like that, if you want to build one, look online, there's all kinds of things. I would just be very careful that it is pressure treated wood and not another kind of wood, because that pressure treated, we know, is not going to have any chemicals in it.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. This was super informative. I know I learned a lot, and I've been composting for years without much success. So I'm excited to try some new stuff. But
well, anybody can email me. It's
Okay.
craig.wood@jocogov.org, and I would be more than happy to try and troubleshoot or anything like that with whatever. So
I will
and
I'll send out your email in the follow-up to everybody.
that'd be
So
great.
I'll send everybody, you'll get Craig's email, and we'll send out the recording to this talk too, for anybody who wants to watch it again or share it. So thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you.
Bye,
I
everyone.
really appreciate it. I love doing it.
Thank
So
you.
thank
This was
you.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Craig. That was awesome.